Okay, so get ready for this, everyone, because today we're going to really deep dive into organ transplantation.
Oh, wow.
It's like this crazy world where you've got cutting edge science butting up against some seriously big ethical
It
questions.
is. It is.
Like we've got this lecture document all about solid organ transplantation, and it's like got my brain in overdrive thinking about all the moving pieces.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about you, but have you ever just like sat there and wondered like where these life-saving organs even come from?
I know, right?
Like the logistics of it all?
It's a fascinating process.
It is. It is.
And how does someone even get on that waiting list?
Yeah.
It's quite remarkable, the whole concept.
Totally. Like, I feel like most people, myself included, like before really digging into this, it's kind of this black box, right? You
Yeah.
know that people get transplants, but you
Right.
don't know anything about how it all goes down.
It's amazing the idea that we can literally replace a failing organ with a healthy one and give somebody another shot at a longer, healthier life.
Right. Exactly.
It's truly a marvel of modern medicine.
Absolutely. And there's more to it than you might think at first glance.
Oh, for sure.
Did you know there are different, like, types of transplants?
There are, yeah.
Okay.
The lecture document actually breaks down the main types.
Okay.
And it starts with something called autotransplantation.
Autotransplantation?
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's like from yourself to yourself.
You got it.
Okay.
It's when they take an organ or a tissue and move it from one part of your body to another.
Oh, okay.
So like the example they gave in here was skin grafts for burn victims.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's like the classic example.
Right, exactly.
So it's all you.
Yep.
Okay, excellent.
So that explains why the document specifically mentioned, skin grafts as an example.
Right. So what other types are there?
Well, there's something called isotransplantation, which occurs between identical twins.
They're doing identical twins.
Okay.
And then you've got allotransplantation, which is the, I guess, the most common type.
Okay.
That's where the organ is transplanted between two people of the
Yeah.
same species, but they're not identical.
Okay, got it.
And then there's this kind of futuristic sounding one called xenotransplantation.
Xenotransplantation.
Yeah, have you heard of that one?
I have not.
So that involves transplanting organs or tissues between different species.
Whoa, different species.
Yeah.
Like a chimpanzee heart into a human.
Well, not quite that extreme.
Okay.
But, think about the use of pig heart valves in humans.
Okay, yeah.
That's actually xenotransplantation
Oh, wow.
in action.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's pretty cutting edge stuff.
That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for this deep dive, though,
Yeah,
let's keep our focus on allotransplantation,
sounds good.
since that's the most common and probably the most complex as well, I imagine. Absolutely. It's where the bulk of the ethical and logistical considerations come into play.
Gotcha. So to understand allotransplantation, we have to kind of go back to square one and be like, where are these organs even coming from?
Right, right.
Right.
That's a great place to start.
So let's talk about that.
Okay, so basically we've got two main sources.
Okay.
We've got living donors,
Okay.
and then we've got deceased donors,
Deceased donors.
which the document kind of clinically refers to as cadaveric donors.
Okay.
But yeah, those are the two main sources.
So living donors, meaning
Just people who are alive
alive and well and willing to give up.
and willing to donate, yeah.
Okay, I'm assuming these are usually like family members or close friends.
Often, yeah,
Okay.
but not always.
Really?
Yeah, you can have living donors who are related or completely unrelated
Whoa.
to the recipient.
That's amazing.
What's interesting is that living donors can actually provide kidneys, liver lobes, and even lung lobes.
Whoa, hold on. So they can give part of their liver
Yep.
or even a lung while they're still alive.
That's right.
That's incredible.
And the source material explains that
Yeah?
the remaining portion of the organ can actually regenerate.
Really?
Yeah, in both the donor and the recipient.
Wow.
It's pretty remarkable.
That is remarkable. I had no idea.
It's a testament to the body's ability to, adapt and heal.
Absolutely.
It's really quite amazing.
Okay, so what about deceased donors then? What organs can they provide?
So deceased donors can actually provide a wider range
Okay.
of organs, including kidneys, liver, lungs, heart, and pancreas.
All right, so it's the whole gamut.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then like how does this whole process of
Yeah.
getting an organ from a deceased donor even work?
Right.
It just seems like it would be such a sensitive and carefully managed thing.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
It's a very, a delicate process, and The lecture document really emphasizes the importance of consent.
Of consent,
Yeah.
yeah.
And here in the U.S., we have what's called an expressed consent system,
Expressed consent.
meaning that uh, individuals have to actually explicitly state their desire to be an organ donor.
Got it.
And they usually do that, when they get their driver's license or through an advance directive or even designate a surrogate.
Okay, so it's not like in some countries where they assume you want to be a donor unless you, like, specifically opt out.
Exactly. Yeah, here in the U.S., it's very much about the individual's right to choose.
I see, I see.
But let's maybe walk through how this actually plays out in a real-life situation.
Yeah.
Because the document actually, lays out the steps.
Yeah, let's get into the nitty-gritty.
Exactly. So let's say someone, passes away in a hospital.
Okay, tragically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happens next? Well, first, healthcare professionals would, talk with the patient's family and see if they knew about the patient's wishes
About organ donation.
regarding organ donation. Exactly.
Okay, and what if the patient didn't, like, express their wishes beforehand?
Well, then an organ procurement organization or an OPO
Mm-hmm.
would be contacted.
An OPO.
Hmm.
Okay.
And here in Texas, we actually have three main OPOs.
Okay.
There's Life Gift, Southwest Transplant Alliance, and Texas Organ Sharing Alliance.
Wow. Okay, so 3 different ones just in Texas.
Yep. And they would actually check the state's donor registry
Okay.
to see if the person was registered as a donor.
Gotcha. And if they are registered.
Then the OPO would go ahead and proceed with, the organ retrieval process.
Okay.
But if not, they would then discuss the option of donation with the next of kin
Next of kin.
or the person who has medical power of attorney
Got it.
for the deceased.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah,
It's a very sensitive process, I can see.
it is.
I've heard some people express concerns about, like, if they're an organ donor, that it might, mess with their funeral arrangements or something like that.
Right, right.
Is there any truth to that?
No, not at all.
Okay.
The source material actually specifically addresses that.
Okay.
It says that organ donation doesn't delay funeral services or prevent an open casket funeral.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, they take great care to make sure that, everything is handled respectfully
Right, right.
and with sensitivity.
That makes sense. So let's say, an organ is successfully procured.
Mm-hmm.
How does it actually get matched with a recipient?
That's where things get really complex.
I bet.
The document outlines a 6-step process.
6 steps.
Yeah, for getting on the transplant list.
Wow.
So first, a patient needs a referral from their healthcare provider.
Okay, so step 1, referral.
Yep, and then I'm guessing you can probably anticipate what comes next.
They got to go through a ton of tests, right,
Exactly.
to see if they're even eligible
Yeah, there's a very thorough evaluation
at a transplant center.
at a transplant center
Great.
to determine if the patient is a suitable candidate.
Okay, so they're looking for reasons why you should get a transplant
Right,
and
well-
reasons why you shouldn't.
Exactly.
Okay.
Those are actually, in medical terms, they're called indications and contraindications.
Oh, okay.
So indications are reasons why you should get it,
Right.
and contraindications are reasons why you shouldn't.
Okay, makes sense.
What's interesting is that the source material actually lists some pretty surprising contraindications.
Really? Like what?
For example, active substance abuse or a history of not following, medical treatment. That could actually make someone ineligible for a transplant.
Wow, I would not have expected that.
Yeah, it's
And
interesting.
what's the reasoning behind that?
Well, I think for substance abuse, it often comes down to the concern that, someone who is actively using substances might not be able to properly care for a transplanted organ.
Oh, okay.
Right. It's a big responsibility. And if someone has a history of not following medical advice,
Yeah.
there's a worry that they might not adhere to the strict post-transplant regimen,
Right.
which is, absolutely crucial for the organ's survival.
Okay, so it's not just about the physical aspects of the transplant, it's also about the patient's
Right.
ability to manage their health afterward.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a major life change.
Yeah.
And the transplant team wants to make sure that that the organ is going to someone who is, really committed to their long-term health.
Right. Committed and able to stick to the plan.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to the steps of getting on this list.
Sure.
So referral, evaluation,
Mhm.
and if a patient meets the criteria and doesn't have any contraindications,
Yep.
then what?
If the evaluation is positive, they are added to the national waiting list,
National waiting list. Okay.
which is managed by the United Network for Organ Sharing, or UNOS.
UNOS.
Yeah,
Okay.
you'll hear that acronym a lot in the transplant world.
Gotcha. But just because you're on the list
Right.
doesn't mean you're guaranteed a transplant.
Unfortunately not. No, there's still a very complex matching process.
Matching process.
Yeah, like UNOS uses to determine who gets the next available organ.
So I'm guessing that takes into account things like blood type and how urgent the need is.
Exactly, yeah. Factors like blood type, tissue compatibility, organ size, medical urgency,
Medical urgency.
and even the distance between the donor and recipient. All of that plays a role.
Wow. So it sounds like it's a whole algorithm.
It really is. It's very sophisticated.
Wow. That's amazing.
Um,
So, okay, a potential match is found.
mhm.
What happens then?
So then the transplant team would evaluate the specific organ
Okay.
to make sure that it's actually suitable for that potential recipient.
Okay.
And if everything checks out,
Yeah.
then the patient is contacted with the offer of the transplant.
Oh man, that's gonna be like such a mix of emotions, right?
can only imagine.
Like relief, but excitement, but probably a little bit of fear too.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's like, wow, this is it.
It's a life-changing moment for sure.
It is. And then of course comes the actual surgery,
Right, the final step.
which I imagine is a whole other can of worms.
It is. It's a very complex and delicate procedure with, its own set of risks and challenges.
Right. It really highlights how like this whole process from, organ procurement all the way to transplant, it's like so many different people and steps involved.
It's a huge undertaking, yeah.
Wow. And we haven't even touched on post-transplant care.
Right, which is a whole other.
I know. I know that's a whole other thing.
It's essential for the long-term success of the transplant, though.
Oh, absolutely.
So we definitely need to talk about that.
We do. That sounds like the perfect segue
Yeah.
into our next part.
Great.
I feel like we covered a lot of ground already.
We have, yeah.
But I'm eager to learn more about what happens after the transplant.
Me too. We'll delve into the details of, post-transplant care, the importance of preventing rejection, managing medications, all that good stuff.
Okay.
The whole other chapter in this fascinating journey.
It is. Looking forward to it.
Me too.
Okay, so we just spent like the last, 20 minutes talking about the incredibly long road to getting a transplant.
It is a long road.
Right, like finding a match,
Mm-hmm.
making sure it's a good fit, going through the surgery,
Right.
and it sounds like the journey is not over even then.
Oh, absolutely not. The post-transplant phase
Post-transplant, right?
is every bit as critical as everything that came before it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The lecture document really dives deep into the care involved, and it's clear that nurses play a huge role.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so like what kind of things do nurses need to be watching out for after a transplant happens?
Well, two of the biggest concerns are rejection and infection.
Okay, rejection, infection.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about it.
Yeah.
This transplanted organ, it's seen as foreign by the recipient's body.
Right.
So there's this natural tendency for the immune system to like attack it.
Okay, right. To be like, wait a minute.
Exactly.
This thing.
Get it out of here.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, of course, if your immune system is weakened,
Yeah.
that also makes you more susceptible to, to infections.
All kinds of bad stuff.
Exactly. So nurses are constantly monitoring vital signs,
Okay.
doing lab work, conducting physical exams, all that stuff, just to
Just to stay on top of it.
stay on top of it and catch any early signs of trouble.
Gotcha.
Yeah. The document even gets into specifics for different organ transplants.
Oh, interesting. Like what?
Well, like for heart transplants,
Uh,
nurses have to carefully monitor something called cardiac output,
cardiac output.
which is basically the amount of blood that the heart pumps per minute. So it's a key indicator of, how well the new heart is actually functioning.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about other organs? Any other examples like that?
Yeah, well, for lung transplants, one thing they watch out for is something called gastroparesis.
Gastro what?
Gastroparesis.
Okay, I'm gonna need to break that one down for me.
Sure. So gastroparesis basically means delayed stomach emptying,
Okay.
and it can actually happen after a lung transplant.
Really?
Yeah, and it's because of the location of the vagus nerve,
The vagus nerve.
which is actually involved in digestion.
Okay.
And sometimes, during the surgery, that nerve gets a little bit disrupted.
Oh, wow. So there's like all these
Yeah, there
like
is.
knock-on effects
Yeah.
that you wouldn't necessarily think about.
Hmm.
Like lung transplant, stomach issues, huh?
it's a whole body experience for sure.
It is. It
And
is.
then, of course, there's the whole issue of rejection,
Right.
yeah,
Rejection.
which we kind of touched on earlier.
We did.
But the document explains there are actually three types:
Okay.
hyperacute, acute, and chronic.
Okay. Hyperacute.
Yeah.
Acute chronic.
Yeah.
So what's the difference?
Well, hyperacute rejection is thankfully rare,
Okay.
but it's the most severe.
Oh.
It happens very quickly, like within 24 hours of the
Oh.
transplant.
Okay.
And it's usually because the recipient already has antibodies against the donor organ.
Oh, so their body's just like, no way, Jose.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like an immediate immune response.
Wow.
And unfortunately, there's no treatment for hyperacute rejection.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and the organ actually has to be removed.
So you go through all of that, you get the organ,
Mhm.
and then your body's just like, nope.
Nope, not happening.
Wow, that's
It's
intense.
definitely a worst case scenario.
Yeah.
But thankfully, with careful screening and matching, it's not very common.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, so what about acute?
So acute rejection is a little more common,
Okay.
and it typically happens within the first 6 months
Right.
after the transplant.
Okay, so how do you even know if someone's having like an acute rejection episode?
Well, the symptoms, they vary depending on the organ,
Okay.
but, some common ones are things like fever,
Okay.
pain, swelling, or decreased organ function.
Okay, so like it's just not working as well as it should be.
Exactly. Yeah. So the good news is that acute rejection can usually be treated with medication,
Okay.
specifically by increasing the dosage of immunosuppressants.
Immunosuppressants. Now, those are the drugs that basically help prevent rejection in the first place, right?
That's right. Yeah, they work by basically suppressing the immune system,
Okay.
so it doesn't, attack the transplanted organ.
Right, right.
But sometimes the initial, doses aren't enough to completely prevent rejection, so they need to be adjusted.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And what about chronic rejection?
Right. So chronic rejection,
You mentioned that one.
it's different. It happens gradually over years,
Okay.
and unfortunately, it's irreversible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's no cure for chronic rejection.
Okay.
So treatment focuses on managing the symptoms
Okay.
and slowing down the damage to the organ.
Okay.
And sometimes, patient might eventually need another transplant.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it really is like it's not a one-time fix.
Right.
It's a lifelong commitment
Exactly. Yeah.
to taking care of your health and managing the risks.
You got it.
Wow. So huge part of that then is sticking to the immunosuppressant medication regimen.
Oh, absolutely.
And the document mentioned that that recipients usually have to take these meds for the rest of their lives. Is that right?
That's right.
Wow.
And it's not always easy.
Yeah.
There can be side effects.
Right.
And the medication can be expensive. Plus, it requires a lot of discipline
Yeah.
to take multiple medications every day.
Yeah.
Exactly as prescribed.
It's a lot.
It is.
So I imagine there's a big education component here.
Oh, for sure.
Nurses must play a key role in kind of explaining all this to patients.
Absolutely. Yeah. They teach recipients all about their medications, what
Okay.
they do, how to take them properly,
Right.
what side effects to watch out for,
Mhm.
how to manage those side effects.
Yeah.
It's a lot of information to absorb,
Yeah, absolutely.
especially when you're still recovering from major surgery.
Exactly. And on top of the medication, the source material also mentioned that that transplant recipients also need to make some like significant lifestyle changes.
Yeah, that's right. They need to follow a special diet, exercise regularly, and be really, vigilant about avoiding infections.
Wow. So it's like a whole new
It is
way of life.
pretty much. Yeah, it's a big adjustment for sure.
But I imagine like, all things considered, it's probably worth it to have a second chance at life.
For most recipients, it absolutely is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of second chances,
Yeah.
the document also briefly touches on some ethical considerations surrounding transplantation,
Oh, I bet.
which is it's a whole other layer of complexity.
Yeah, I mean, this whole topic just seems rife with ethical dilemmas. Like,
Yeah.
who gets priority on the waiting list?
Right.
What about people who need a second transplant because they didn't take care of the first one?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you even begin to untangle all of that?
Yeah, those are really tough questions, and to be honest, the document doesn't doesn't delve into them too deeply,
Okay.
but it definitely makes you think about the bigger picture.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear your take on this.
Mm.
Like, what are some of the most pressing ethical issues in organ transplantation,
Mhm.
in your opinion?
Well, I think one of the biggest issues is just the concept of fairness.
Okay, fairness.
Yeah, with a limited supply of organs
Right.
and a growing number of people in need, how do we ensure that that the allocation system is equitable
Right.
and that everyone has a fair shot?
Yeah, it can't just be about
But
like
yeah,
who can afford it or who has the best connections.
exactly,
Huh.
exactly.
Right.
And then there's a whole issue of informed consent,
Informed consent, right?
particularly when it comes to living donors.
Okay.
How do we make sure that potential donors fully understand
Yeah.
the risks and benefit
Uh-huh.
and that they're not being coerced in any way?
Right. Right.
So that's a big one.
And what about those situations where like a deceased person wanted to be a donor,
Mm.
but they're family objects?
Yeah,
That's gotta be a tough one
it is. It
to
is.
navigate.
It raises questions about, about autonomy and who has the ultimate say over a person's body, even after death.
Right, right.
So it's complicated.
It is
It's
complicated.
very complicated.
Yeah, this is getting pretty heavy.
It is heavy stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I feel like we could have a whole separate deep dive
I think so.
just on the ethical aspects of organ transplantation.
We probably could. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's a whole field to study in and of itself.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. But for now, I think it's important for listeners to understand that like there are no easy answers
Right.
to these questions.
Right. Yeah.
It's an ongoing
An ongoing conversation.
conversation, and it's something that society as a whole needs to grapple with.
Absolutely. Yeah. It requires careful consideration
Right. Or
and a lot of dialogue and debate.
absolutely. Well, we've explored a lot in this deep dive.
We have
Like the different types of transplants, the intricacies of organ procurement, the challenges of post-transplant care,
Mhm.
and now we've just scratched the surface
The tip of the iceberg.
of the ethical considerations.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling to think about all the factors involved.
It really is. It's a very complex system.
It is, and yet
Mm-hmm.
amidst all this complexity,
Yeah.
there are these incredible stories of
Of hope
hope and resilience.
and resilience.
Like stories of people whose lives have been literally transformed
Right.
by organ transplantation.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's truly remarkable.
It is, and that's actually a perfect point because we've
Mhm.
been so focused on like the
the
technical
companies.
and ethical aspects that we haven't really explored the human side of this.
I agree. Yeah.
Right.
And while the document doesn't really go into specific personal stories,
Okay.
I think it's essential to remember that that behind all these statistics and medical procedures,
Yeah.
there are real people
Real people.
going through these extraordinary experiences.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So for our final part,
Let's shift gears a little bit and try to connect with that human element.
I'm with you.
Even though we don't have personal anecdotes
Right.
from the source material, I
Mhm.
think it's important to acknowledge
Absolutely.
like the emotional impact of organ transplantation
Uh-huh.
on both recipients and donors.
Yeah, for sure. Let's explore those hopes, those fears,
Yeah.
the triumphs, and even the heartbreaks that are part of this remarkable journey.
Yeah, the full spectrum of the human experience.
Exactly.
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time in this deep dive,
Yeah.
talking about all the ins and outs of organ transplantation,
Yeah.
the science, the logistics, the ethics, all
Mhm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
But I kind of feel like it's time we zoom in on something really important, and that's the human side of all this.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
The lecture document focuses a lot on the technical aspects.
right. But it's at the end of the day, it's crucial to remember that organ transplantation is all about people.
Yeah.
Their lives, their hopes,
There are hopes.
and their incredible acts of generosity. Really,
Right. It's about second chances.
second chances.
And the families who make these selfless decisions
Yeah,
to donate a loved one's organs
yeah.
in the midst of their grief.
It's a powerful thing.
It is.
Absolutely.
It's, those nail-biting moments of waiting for a match.
Yeah, the uncertainty,
And the relief.
the relief.
When that call finally comes.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a roller coaster of emotions.
It is.
And I think it's easy to, lose sight of that when you're talking about immunosuppressants and surgical techniques.
Right, right.
But every transplant
Yeah,
represents a human story,
absolutely.
a life touched by this incredible field of medicine.
Yeah, and even though our source material doesn't really go into any like personal anecdotes, I can't help but think about like
Yeah.
the person on the other side of that transplant, the
Yeah.
recipient. Like,
Yeah.
what must that be like
I know.
to be given a second chance?
It's profound.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine facing a life-threatening illness,
Yeah.
knowing that your only hope is a transplant.
Yeah.
The waiting, the uncertainty, the
Yeah.
fear.
Yeah.
It must be so incredibly difficult.
Absolutely.
And then to actually receive that gift,
Yeah.
that chance to keep living, it's truly life-altering.
I bet it changes your whole perspective
I think so.
on life, on everything.
It makes you appreciate every moment, every breath.
Wow.
And I think it also makes you just incredibly grateful
Yeah.
for the donor and their family.
Yeah, there's like this connection that goes beyond,
Mhm.
the physical.
It transcends.
Yeah, it transcends the physical.
Absolutely.
It's like you're carrying a part of someone else with you,
Uh-huh.
literally and figuratively.
You really are.
Yeah.
And it's not just the recipient who's affected.
Right.
The donor's family. Even in their grief,
Yeah.
they find a sense of purpose,
Yeah.
knowing that their loved one's legacy
Lives on.
lives on in someone else.
Wow.
It's really quite incredible.
It's such an amazing act.
It is, of generosity.
It speaks to the best of humanity, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah.
It does, and it reminds us that even in the face of
A lot.
tremendous loss, there can be hope
Yeah.
and healing.
Absolutely.
It's also, I think, a real testament to the power of medical science
Those medical science.
and the dedication of all the people who make organ transplantation possible. The surgeons,
The surgeons, the nurses,
the
researchers, the OPOs.
the OPOs. Yeah,
It's a whole team effort,
it is.
and everyone plays a vital role.
Absolutely. Well, I think we've reached the end of our
Yeah.
deep dive. Our deep dive.
Into the world of organ transplantation.
It's been a journey.
It's been a journey, that's for sure.
It has.
Filled with fascinating insights, complex questions, moments of profound reflection.
Profound reflection.
Yeah, I hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for the
For the science.
for the science,
The ethics.
the ethics, but most
The
importantly,
human stories.
the human stories behind this incredible field.
It is an incredible field.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
So if there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's that organ transplantation is more than just a medical procedure.
Right.
It's a testament to the power of hope,
Of hope.
generosity, and
And
the enduring human spirit.
Beautifully said.
And remember, this is just the beginning of the exploration. There's so much more to learn
Absolutely.
about organ transplantation.
Definitely.
So thanks for joining us on this incredible journey.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
And we encourage you to keep exploring, keep learning,
Keep learning.
and keep the conversation going.
Absolutely.